And we'll have more reaction to that story from Pakistan and here as well. But first, let's get an update on the rest of the headlines of the day with Charlotte.
Mark, thanks very much. Good morning. Lord Mandelson has hit out at the Labour leadership contender Ed Miliband, suggesting he would be a regressive influence on the party. In an interview with The Times, and a French skyscraper climber nicknamed Spider-Man's been arrested after scaling a 57-storey building in Sydney. Alain Robert, who's famous for climbing some of the world's biggest structures with no safety equipment, took just 20 minutes to scale the city's Lumiere building. The 48-year-old's climbed more than 70 skyscrapers across the world, including the Empire State Building, the Sears Tower and the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur.
Going upstairs to bed, be a bit sort of...
Bit mundane
after that, really. Yes, thank you very much. Time for the paper. Good morning, you're watching Sunrise this Bank Holiday Monday with me, Mark Longhurst. We're live through until 10 o'clock and still to come, all the papers with Neil. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
And Charlotte, of course, for the rest of the headlines. But first, we're going to update you with our top news. Well, let's get the rest of the day's news now with Charlotte.
Thanks, Mark. Lord Mandelson's hit out at the Labour leadership contender Ed Miliband, suggesting he'd be a regressive influence on the party. In an interview with...
I've got some loose tires, I might give him a ring, actually. Anyway, good morning and welcome to the Bank Holiday Papers to Neil, which is a bit of a job to do.
Bit of a struggle today.
A bit of a struggle. However, cricket's still there in a big way.
Well, I should think all the papers this morning and all the media, frankly, are grateful for the for this story. What an incredible story it is. It's not often that you actually see a story on the front page of a Sunday tabloid absolutely dominating every front page on the planet, just about.
And the back pages.
Front pages, black pages.
Yeah,
there's 10 pages of this in the Times today, and you've got to say it's worth every centimetre of it, isn't it? It's a most extraordinary story. Where it'll end, I don't know. I mean, I think there's some really sort of touching things in it as well. I was reading a Pakistani businessman who'd flown here to actually watch, and he was sort of saying how it had wiped the floods, it had wiped the terrorism off the front pages in Pakistan. And he said, cricket there is the one thing that holds the country together. And you've got all this tragedy we've just seen on Sky News there of, you know, the after effect of those floods. And this is just, there's only one word associated with Pakistan this morning, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's corruption.
And we were speaking to Cricinfo again, the website, and they were saying much the same. And, you know, they are talking about having to rebuild hospitals and schools after the floods, and yet all the public comment is about their shame at these allegations.
That's right, and it will be a complete distraction. Britain, I think I read the other day, is one of the leading donors in the world to the flood relief, £40 million from ordinary people.
What will happen to that now?
What will happen to that now? You know, when somebody stops you in the street, is there going to be a problem with that? I suspect there might be, and that's really sad. I have to say as well, though, as an old newspaper hand, that this is a great newspaper story, a great piece of investigative journalism. Mazza Mahmood, who we've both worked with, it is an absolute vindication of the work that he has been doing for years. I mean, just think of the sheer logistics of, you've seen the video, that's £150,000 on a table in front of them. I don't know how you actually get that much together. I think they must have gone to Thomas Cook or something.
And filmed it in focus as well, which is...
Well, it's a big help.
Yeah, anyway.
There he is, look.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have to say that he has now been released without charge on police bail. We'll see what happens to these specific allegations, but 80 other matches now being looked at by the cricket authorities.
It's a truly extraordinary story.
Maybe to come on that.
But wasn't it interesting that despite all of this over the papers yesterday, the Test match still went on?
Absolutely.
Very
and
British.
England won. Yeah.
Yes.
Daily Telegraph, plans to cap risky mortgages.
Well, this is a more serious story, isn't it, in the sense of long-term in this country. The whole issue of the double-dip recession and the whole issue of, in Britain, this is always, our economy hinges enormously on housing. And the big problem, apparently, is first-time buyers. Normally, in the market, 40% of the housing market is first-time buyers. This is now down to the mid-20s. And, you know, I've got two daughters in their 20s. I look at them. I live down here in London, which is obviously the most expensive part of the country, but you do wonder how on earth they get a foot on the ladder.
Especially if they've gone to college, university, having to pay back the tuition fees before they can even think about getting a deposit together.
Well, absolutely.
It's a generation which your papers have talked about over the weekend that is facing perhaps more penury than any of the post-war generations.
I think I read somewhere at the weekend that the average house price in London is in excess of 200,000. And it's talking about going back to the days of where you had to have a 10% or even a 25% deposit before you got a mortgage. I don't know where you get that money.
Someone else we both worked with, Danny Buckland, in the Mirror, going for a shocking story about OAP patients starving to death.
Well, I don't often get shocked by stories as you leaf through a paper. You know, they're interesting, but they're all variations, you know, over the years. Not to say they're not interesting. This genuinely shocked me, and you're right, we both know Danny. He's a great reporter. But the idea that somehow 200 people, that's 4 times a week, an old person is allowed to starve to death in our hospitals. It takes my breath away.
Yeah.
You know, how can that happen? How can they forget to feed people to the extent that they actually starve to death? It's actually quite hard work to starve to death. You know, it really has to be terrible experience over a long period of time. Just unbelievable.
Now, unfortunately, Charlotte, we've not got time for Cliff Richard's body this time round, but we are going to feature it again.
Time,
so
maybe.
yeah, so just to sort of, you know, set the scene.
I'll prepare myself.
Quick. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for that. We'll see you a bit later. Let's tell you now about